Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. This is a 2021 Livewire One. That is right, it is no longer technically the Harley-Davidson Livewire, it is just Livewire, the brand on its own. This is the fully electric Harley-Davidson, if you want to call it that, but again, Livewire. I also don't know what color this is. This is a media bike, and it has this burgundy metallic that is so sharp, but when I look on the website they only have a black and white option. I don't know what's up with that, but again, this is a press bike, so it is very possible that it's just a different color. I love this color. They should absolutely sell it because it is super sharp. So I've had this bike now for a few weeks, but I did also ride the Polaris Slingshot for a while. I had that one shorter term, so I did some content around that first. But I'm going to do a few videos on this Livewire because I love this bike, and I think there's some argument to be made that is a fantastic daily commuter bike. And we'll talk about that more as we go for a bit of a ride. So I actually have 38 miles to get home. And as you can see, I have 64 miles of range. I'm going to show you guys. I have it set right now. I made my own ride mode. I'm going to bump this up a little bit and do 20-20-20. And traction on medium. And exit. Save and exit. The reason is the range mode goes 40, 80, and 55 for all of these settings and medium. But I'm actually trying to see if I can get a little more range out of this. So 64 miles. And in terms of a daily commuter, I'll explain why I'm doing that. Let's go ahead and get moving here. Let's not wash this out in the sand. So as I'm cruising down the road here, I'll explain why I'm reducing those power numbers. And it's actually pretty simple. It's still stupid fast. What I found with this is, of course, range with batteries is always the Achilles heel of an EV. And when you get into motorcycles, it's even more so because this fully charged, I have been seeing full range of about 103 miles in the morning when I leave for work. 100 miles isn't very much, but the reason why I say I think it's a great daily commuter is most people probably don't do 100 miles in a day round trip. Most people probably do, 50 if you live 25 miles away from work. And with that, you are well within range to get to the office and get home and plug it in at the end of the day. That is why it would be a great daily commuting bike. Now, for me, in my job, I'm using it as a commuter right now because my F-150 is in the shop. But I am way up north because I had to run up to a job site and take a look at some progress. So that's where this bike starts to have some, I don't want to say issues because it's just something you have to work around, but if you start adding any components into your daily routine, you really have to start thinking about what it is you're doing and planning that route. So first I'll talk about what happened 2 days ago that really was a shock to me about how this whole EV thing works out. Again, I've had this bike for a few weeks, and for the most part, I was just zipping back and forth to the office. No issues with the range. Again, you just kind of back and forth to work, you're fine. But 2 days ago, I had to run up to the dealership where my truck is currently sitting. So basically, my day consisted of 25-ish miles to the office, but then at lunchtime, 25 miles in the opposite direction, kind of north, to go to the dealership, and then 25 miles back to the office. That's 75 miles, and I also wasn't riding super mellow, so that left me with 13 miles of range by the time I got back to the office. And simple math, 13 is less than 25, so I'm not going to be able to get home. Now I realized this sort of at the tail end of my lunch, and this is where I hear people in the EV world say like, oh, you just stop and get a bite to eat. Well, that's great, but it's not always convenient to stop and get a bite to eat. Time isn't always on your side. So you have to be more strategic with your planning. And I got back to the office, again, 13 miles of range, realized that's not going to work. By the way, I'm going to show you real quick. This bike is awesome for lane filtering. Oh, light switched. Stone cold silent, works great for that scenario, which lane filtering just became legal in Arizona. So yeah, lane filtering on this, love it. I'll talk about that in a moment. In terms of range, what happened was I get back to work and see 13 miles of range left on the bike. Again, not gonna fly. So I just pulled out my phone at a red light and looked up EV charger or something, and Apple Maps sent me over to a local business park where I stopped and I plugged in. Well, 10 minutes goes by. First of all, I look around and I'm like, well, there is nowhere to eat here. It's literally just a parking lot. So much for convenient time to eat, because honestly, that would have been a great time to eat. But I look around and I see nothing, and 10 minutes goes by, and I notice 1 mile of range after 10 minutes goes into the battery, and I'm like, well, I'm already at the end of my lunch, and that's not going to fly. Luckily, I have a job where I can maybe extend lunch a little bit. It's not a big deal. Can't do it all the time, but once in a blue moon, not a big deal. For people who punch a clock, that is not necessarily the case. That would be a giant problem for them. But I digress. Let's snake our way up front here. I've got a fruit fly buzzing around my nose. Let's get that guy out of the helmet here. Get out of here. Back to the charging thing, but yeah, lane filtering. Good job, Arizona. I love that this bike can do it silently because they just made it legal. And I feel like if you're doing that now on a bike that people can hear, that you might trigger some people who don't know it's legal now. And this just eliminates the potential of them really opening a door on you because they don't know you're coming. I guess I'll make that point now, which I was going to make later in this video. But lane filtering is fantastic, and it's a great thing to do on this specific motorcycle. But going back to my time in California, when I went to visit Laidlaw, where they have lane splitting down the highway, and real quick difference is lane filtering is, at least here in Arizona, it's only illegal on divided highways where the speed limit is 45 or under. So basically you can't do it on the highway, but you can do it here. But in California on the highway, you can split lanes through moving traffic. That's where this bike, I start to get a little more sketched out because, well, if you're doing that and people can't hear you coming and people are changing lanes, well, then you're kind of opening yourself up to maybe get someone switching lanes on you and not really ready for that to happen. We're gonna lane filter this way. Bike lane. This is not legal, so we'll tuck back in behind this dude. That was not a legal example of lane splitting, or lane filtering, sorry. But hey, we're not perfect, right? All right. That's where I love this bike. Man, the power right on tap. But anyways, in terms of lane splitting, yeah, I would be a little more sketched out doing that on a silent bike. I do have a little bit of B-roll from picking this bike up in California, and I will say I was just kind of paying attention to the bikes coming down the side, and yeah, the ones that are the loudest, you can hear coming, and it certainly makes that safer for that rider.
Consistent branch burst. Yeah, right. We're a funny way. You can't do that today the same way because
I'm not a big loud pipe save lives kind of guy, but it's hard to argue that in that scenario. Now, getting back to charging this thing, the issue I had was the charger that I was at was only putting 1% every 10 minutes into the battery. Not gonna fly, was not a fast charger. So I looked up fast chargers and found one that was like 10 minutes down the road. Now I'm already past my lunch basically, but I had to put a charge in the bike. I also didn't have the charger on me because, rookie mistake, I was thinking, well, I'll just back and forth to the office, don't need to charge in between. I learned a lesson there, I'll talk about that too. But I shot over to a fast charger that was about 10 minutes down the road. There was a restaurant there, so I grabbed a bite to eat, like everybody always says, grab a burger. I grabbed a slice of pizza, and in a half an hour I got something like 40 miles of range, but it cost me $11. So I was like pretty annoyed by that. I'm thinking like, man, $11 for 40 miles. My motorcycle, my 2018 Heritage, gets like 39 miles per gallon, 37 miles per gallon, and a gallon of gas only costs $4.50, whatever you want to call it. So it would have been half as expensive to stop at a gas station and taken me 10 seconds to fill the tank, I don't know, a minute or two to fill the tank, and back on the road. But I learned that some of these chargers will charge you, get back in your lane. Some of these chargers will charge you a basically flat fee just for plugging in, because these people that install these chargers are trying to make a buck or two off the charging, and electricity is cheap, or cheaper, so they want to make a flat fee. Kind of sucks when you're only doing a motorcycle for a half an hour and getting 40 miles for 11 bucks. So that sucked, but I did then learn today, on my way up to this job site, I had to stop at Buddy Stubbs Harley-Davidson, who actually had a Livewire charger there, which was free. And in the matter of a half an hour, I charged the battery from 25-ish miles of range left to 75 miles of range left. That took a half an hour, put me to 75 miles, and it's enough for me to shoot back home. So there's just a whole bunch of learning in terms of where you should and should not charge and how to plan your day. The argument for this bike being a great daily commuter is very valid, as long as, number one, you're just kind of back and forth to the office and you know you're not going anywhere in between, fine. Or you know you're going somewhere in between and specifically plan a lunch stop for a supercharger, but also be aware that a supercharger at that lunch spot, if you're planning your route for the day, that supercharger, by the time you get to that point, might have a vehicle at it, so you kind of might be SOL. There is an awful lot of pitfalls to electric vehicles that the EV fanboys try to conveniently dismiss away, and I won't do that. It's certainly a very real problem. I am going to take this Livewire out tomorrow on a ride up into Tortilla Flat, same place I go pretty frequently for testing kind of in the twisties, and there are no chargers between my house and my house. So that round trip, I'm going to have no ability to charge. Luckily, I think it's only like 60 miles round trip or something, so should have plenty of juice in there to do it. But that's what EV people need to realize, is that going out into remote areas, there's not always a charger nearby. So some things to learn about that. But back to commuting on this thing daily, absolutely more fun than my 2018 Heritage. The power out of this bike is intoxicating. I mean, the fact I've got this thing dumbed down and I can just rocket ship to 90 miles an hour in a split second, and that's on just like I said, 20% throttle, 20% inputs. And if I switch this over to sport mode, it it basically wants to throw you off of the bike. If you kind of aren't paying attention when you hit that throttle, it's just ridiculous. I found myself actually riding my Z06, and I found myself riding in eco mode for a while, and then I realized, well, wait a minute, if I'm going to try to dumb it down, why don't I just make a custom mode and actually dumb it down a little bit further and try to make this more of like a mileage play on a day like today, where I'm going to be knowingly traveling further distances and not trying to just destroy battery life by flipping that throttle. Because when it's there, in my experience, you will use it. It's pretty crazy. So being able to turn that down and only give yourself a modest throttle, and by modest I say it's still ridiculous. So a very fun bike to ride on a daily basis. The other component of the fun part is, man, people want to talk about this bike. My Heritage, everybody likes a nice Harley-Davidson, and it'll always turn heads, and it's always interesting to talk about. But your average person who could really care less about motorcycles, for some reason finds this one very interesting. It's just it's a talking point. And everywhere I go, people want to talk about this Livewire. So it's just fun. And when I was leaving the office a couple times this week, just people will be like, I don't know about an electric bike. There was always like this weird, I don't know about it. I don't know, man, motorcycles are supposed to be loud and obnoxious. So those people in particular, it was kind of fun. Just get on the throttle when I was on my way out, and then hear them come over to me the next morning and be like, man, that thing is insane. It changes opinions instantaneously. Even for haters out there, this bike is a total game changer. So I'm not going to edit this video down too short because I think there's enough here to talk about. So I'm going to kind of just keep going with it on my ride home. And, you know, I'll probably cut it right before I get home. But I'll get back in the garage and show you guys the miles that were left. And this is basically how I'm riding it. I'm not going slow. I'm not doing 100 all the time. But, you know, riding 80 miles an hour, keeping up with the flow of traffic. With the electric bike being silent, I'm already the kind of person who likes to ride through traffic. So like right here in particular, I will get on the gas and I can care less what my speedometer, you know, says. I want to get out of blind spots because I am quiet. So I find myself a lot of times not necessarily paying attention to the speed of the bike, but really being immersed in what's going on around me, so that I'm not finding myself riding in blind spots for far too long. This motorcycle does make you ride slightly more aware, which is a good thing than what you do, in my opinion, normally. I think that there's times where on my bike complacency might set in. You know, people can hear around you, and there's a lot to be said about that. Another thing that I find as a negative of this bike, which is just because of the design, is the mirrors. I find myself a lot of times riding with my elbows up just so I can get a glimpse of what is behind me, because when I'm riding just kind of comfortably relaxed, all I see is my arm here. I cannot see anything behind me. But I would definitely flip these mirrors upside down on this bike so that I was getting a view kind of across my body as opposed to straight into my arm. I thought about doing it for this review unit, but I just really didn't want to take a wrench to a bike that's not mine. I just wanted to review it as it comes off the showroom floor. Now, the only other critique I have about this bike, and that's really it, there is only two, unless you get into the range thing, but it's not really a critique because that is just what an EV has. But the seat, I would absolutely, if I bought one of these, replace the seat very quickly. I find my legs falling asleep here. At times, I've got to kind of reposition myself on the seat, otherwise I just kind of lose feeling through the lower body, and it's kind of like tingly. So I think this seat, it leaves a little bit to be desired, but that's kind of a common, also individual thing. I'm sure plenty of people with their Livewires have no complaints about seats because that is very specific to the individual. So I've just absolutely enjoyed taking this thing out on daily commuting. I've put, let's see, what do we have? 1,067 miles. So I think I've put about 300 miles on this thing now, commuting. And tomorrow I'll put 60, 65, I guess more recreational riding, which will be interesting for sure. And come back for that video because that will be the next one. And then I also might just do a third video talking about this thing, just kind of like a wrap-up video, because it's an awesome motorcycle, and I think Harley-Davidson deserves an awful lot of credit for putting the effort and R&D into such an amazing motorcycle, truly amazing. So if you guys haven't ridden the Livewire yet, especially any of you who are going to drop a comment down below saying that an electric motorcycle is stupid, if you haven't ridden it yet, save your comment, go out, ride one of these things, and then come back and tell me that you have ridden it and you think it sucks. Because anybody that I know that's ridden one of these things, including people that thought it was kind of questionable, smile ear to ear, absolutely love it. Nobody I've known that's ridden these things has a bad thing to say about them, except for maybe range. And at one point price, but now the price is cheaper again. Probably mentioned that in my wrap-up video, but that is my take on this thing for now. This video was certainly longer than an average one, but I think that there's enough here to talk about for this Livewire. It is positioned very uniquely in the industry. Sure, there's zero motorcycles, but I do think the Livewire is kind of in a class of its own in terms of fit and finish and being just an amazing, amazing motorcycle. So here we are pulling into the garage with 19 miles of range left. When I left there, 65 miles of range, and it was a 38-mile trip. 65 minus 38, make sure my numbers are right. 27 miles of range is what I should have had left when I got home, and I have 19. But I also was not riding for range. I was riding at times relatively quickly, and the point that I'm making here with lowering down some of those settings to give yourself less power, I had everything set to 20%, so 20% power, 20% regen, and 20% throttle. That basically limited the amount of power that I had on tap to be sure that I didn't have this range be even less than what I had. So again, I should have had 27 miles. So I basically lost 10 miles of range of what the bike said by riding like a hooligan. So that's going to happen with the Livewire, no doubt. So kind of always make sure you have a little bit of extra range there. But now, coming home, pop this open. And I bought a separate charger, which I'll link an Amazon link down below. I forgot what this was, but it was like the #1 selling charger off Amazon. I bought this assuming I'm going to have more bikes coming to review that might be electric, and it wouldn't hurt to have an electric charger on hand. Now, once this Livewire goes back, as of right now, I don't have anything else electric, but for what this is, and having the YouTube channel, now I can just plug it in. What I found was when I was in that bind at work and I had to stop for a charge, I actually could have just pulled the bike in the shop and with that charged it there, but I did not have the charger with me because I was leaving it in the garage, basically just commuting back and forth for a daily commute, never thinking I would need the charger on hand. That's not a smart thing to do. I think if you have a bike like this, smart to have a backup charger so that you can leave the Harley-Davidson charger coiled up in the bike. That way you're just kind of preventing the issues of being out somewhere out of battery with no charger. This is your gas can. So in my opinion, you want to leave that there. I'd rather be in a situation where I'm begging somebody to use their outlet than being in a situation where I don't even have that option. And it just seems to me like you should have a separate charger in the garage to be able to charge those bikes up. So with that being said, guys, that is my commuting input on the Harley-Davidson Livewire. I think it's an awesome motorcycle. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to do another follow-up video on this in the Twisties tomorrow. Well, whenever I publish it, but I'll record that tomorrow. So thank you very much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, please hit that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to help support the channel. I'll see you guys next time.